The judge has given the instructions to the jury. They have begun deliberating. And in the instructions, the judge has rigged the trial against Donald Trump. The judge actually instructed the jury that they do not need to be unanimous in their decision as to the crime Trump committed in order to convict him of falsifying business records. I can't believe it. In this morning's special live segment, we talked about how in the closing arguments, the prosecution said, you don't need to agree that Trump committed the same crime. You can all disagree on the crime he committed so long as you all agree he did commit a crime. What does that mean? Well, it means that the jury could go back behind the scenes and say, I don't think Trump committed any kind of campaign violation. Another juror can say, I don't think he committed a tax violation. The other individual can say, I don't think he committed any of these violations. I think he was jaywalking or something. They said each of the jurors could disagree on the crime they think Trump may or may not have committed. But so long as they all agree a crime was committed, Trump is guilty. You realize, and the judge gave instructions saying exactly that. What does that mean? Welcome to the nightmare dystopia, my friends. The state of New York is now saying if they decide to bring a crime that has any kind of underlying attachment, the jury need not actually agree that you committed any of these crimes so long as they agree a crime in general was committed somewhere. That's right. Donald Trump will be convicted in one criminal court case of different crimes of varying issue so long as they agree at Trump at some point. I can't believe it. Now, I've been saying for some time now, what I thought would happen is the prosecution would come out and tell the jury, think about everything you've heard about Donald Trump in this trial and everything you know Donald Trump did in this trial. The point being that they would convince the jury to convict Trump not on this case, but on literally anything. Just lock him up. I didn't realize the judge would actually give those exact instructions, saying outright, you do not have to be unanimous on the crime Trump committed. Now, normally it'd be like this. Let's say a guy is accused of committing fraud and then reckless endangerment with a vehicle followed by intentional homicide, right? So it's a guy who defrauds a person and then a guy and his wife are defrauded. And he's getting in his car to leave, and they chase after him. So he speeds, full speed, swerving in and out of cars, and then crashes. They jump out. He turns around, pulls out a gun, and opens fire, killing one of the guys. Murder. You've got to convict the guy in each of these crimes. You've got to say, we agree the evidence shows he committed fraud. We agree the evidence shows that he was reckless endangerment driving his vehicle. We agree the evidence shows that he turned around, he committed murder. What they're saying now is, it doesn't matter on any of these counts of tax fraud, campaigns, finance violations, or otherwise. So long as you agree Trump at some point committed a crime related to his business filings, lock him up. I can't believe it. Newsweek says Trump acquittal now unlikely from a prosecutor. Yeah, because the judge said you don't have to be unanimous. I've got the jury instructions here. We've got new updates. It's all coming in real time. Trump is smiling in court. Merchan directs parties to remain close. You cannot leave the building. Trump is not allowed to leave. Jury deliberations have begun. Before we jump into all of these great details, my friends, head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, support our work directly. We rely on viewers like you to keep the operation up and running. Yeah, we do get ad sponsorships and it does make money, but memberships is the main driver. Especially since we've been putting all of our segments on Rumble because we believe in Rumble's mission in challenging YouTube. That means we make less ad money, especially. So particularly if you're a member watching on Rumble, please consider supporting us at timcast.com so that we can continue to keep our videos up on Rumble. Just to stress, we love Rumble. We use Rumble infrastructure for our website, for our back end and everything because we want Rumble to win. But Rumble doesn't have the same ad power as YouTube does, so we don't make as much money. Consider becoming a member at timcast.com. And also Ian's Graphene Dream. Coffee now available at castbrew.com. We got to get those sponsor spots in, my friends. Here we go. Nick Sorter says, Judge Merchan has told the jury they do not need unanimity to convict. This means 4 jurors could agree on the first crime, falsifying records. 4 on the second, tax violations. 4 on the third, federal elections violations. Yep. And Merchan would still count that as a unanimous guilty verdict from the 12-member jury. The fix is in. Ladies and gentlemen, the judge has rigged this against Trump. I don't know where we go from here, my friends. Jonathan Turley. He's got the breakdown. Let's read it. He says the judge is giving instructions. He stated that he wants to stay close to the standard instructions. The problem is this case anything but standard. Yesterday was chilling as the judge allowed prosecutors to engage in what some view as highly inappropriate arguments. We read this in the earlier morning segment. Merchan is telling them they can only consider Cohen's plea to a federal election violation. Merchan is telling them that they can only consider Cohen's plea to a federal election violation was only allowed to judges' credibility and offer context. That is meek after the prosecutors have repeatedly said that such violations were committed as an indisputable fact, and that Trump ordered them to be committed. Judge Merchan said that if they find any witness has testified with regard to any material fact, they can disregard it. Merchan has instructed the first count of falsifying business records in the first degree must show that Trump made or causes a false entry to be made. Intent means conscious or purpose to defraud. Intent does not require an intent to defraud any particular person or entry, but a general intent to defraud. And then he says, Merchan has just delivered the coup de grace instruction. He said that there is no need to agree on what occurred. They can disagree on what the crime was among the 3 choices. Thus, this means they could split 4-4-4 and he will still treat them as unanimous. Merchan just noted if the money would have been paid regardless of the campaign, it is not a contribution. There it is. I can't believe that we're here. I mean, I can believe it. I got to be honest. I can believe it. The fix is in. Did y'all think anything else was going to happen? We thought you'd get a hung jury. The judges made it clear. They're going to go back to their deliberations. And someone's going to be like, I don't think Trump committed these crimes. And they're going to say, did he falsify the business records? And they're going to be like, I mean, the prosecutor said he did. The prosecutor said it was a statement of fact that Donald Trump ordered Cohen to violate federal elections. Why are we here? He did it. How could you have a hung jury in that case? One guy might be like, I'm not doing that. You can't even nullify. They'll be like, do you think any one of these? What about taxes? He was reimbursing Cohen's taxes. Yeah, I guess. All right, then he's guilty. Wow. They put up a bunch of different crimes and said, mix and match, choose your own adventure, lock him up. You know what? I tweeted this. I hope Trump goes to jail. I really do. He'll win overnight. That's what Kash Patel said. Trump is probably counting on it. When it came to the gag order violations, many people and the left especially were speculating Trump was trying to get locked up, but he needs to make it look like it's the judge's heavy hand and not Trump's heavy hand. Meaning Trump gets gagged and says, okay, I won't. And then pushes the envelope a little bit so it looks like the judge is being unreasonable because he wants the judge to lock him up. Preparations have been made. Secret Service prepares for possibility of Trump going to jail. The Secret Service has reportedly met with jail officials in New York in anticipation of a possible conviction of former President Donald Trump's hush money case. A corrections source told CBS News that such preparations were underway as the Manhattan trial reached closing arguments and jury deliberations this week. The report said corrections officers would be responsible for protecting any Secret Service agents tasked with safeguarding Trump if he spends any time behind bars. Look. I believe there's a greater than chance probability that this will benefit Trump if he goes to jail, but I don't know for sure. Many people may just be like, wow, Trump did it. He's found guilty. I can't believe it. I don't know that would fly, though. I got to be honest. I don't see that. I have more faith in the American people. Maybe I shouldn't, but I feel like regular Americans are going to be like, what is going on? Fareed Zakaria, I'm going to say this every time, said this case shouldn't be brought. He said they would never bring this against anybody else. Then to actually lock him up for it, I believe would be the death knell for Democrats. Newsweek says, it is unlikely Trump will be acquitted in his hush money case, a former federal prosecutor has said. Niyama Ramani, now president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers in L.A., commented on the former president's chances of acquittal as the jury prepared deliberations. He told Newsweek, an outright acquittal is unlikely, but a hung jury is very possible given the political nature of the case, and even convictions on misdemeanors would be a victory for the former president. In April, Trump, the presumptive 2024 nominee, became the first former president in U.S. history to stand trial in a criminal case. He has pleaded not guilty. Ramani said the defense's closing arguments should have focused on the charges in the case and stayed away from the two-star witnesses. He added that the defense's case was partly built on the claim the records were personal and not business-related, that they were not false, and that Trump didn't personally falsify the records, and that even if he did, they were not in furtherance to cover up another crime. If the jurors, or even one juror, buy any of these arguments, it's a win for Trump. Paul Der Ohanessian, what a name, a criminal defense attorney in Albany, New York, told Newsweek that Trump's lawyers should have assumed that most jurors won't like their client and will want to convict him. The best approach in the situation is to argue why the case is more important than Trump. Why would jurors who don't like him acquit him? Make the case about standing up for the principles of our justice system, like the presumption of innocence and reasonable doubt. Stephen Gillers, a law professor at New York University, told Newsweek, the weakest link in the government's proof is Cohen. Gillers added that prosecutors were able to show that there was a strong circumstantial evidence in the case. He said circumstantial evidence, contrary to popular myth, can be as strong as or even stronger than direct evidence and can establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. None of it matters. The judge basically just rigged the game. Jury deliberation, 24 minutes in at the time of recording this. Absolutely amazing. We've got all these instructions, a lot to break down, and we'll get to what we can. But I think this is all extremely important. We're going to go back here about an hour. Judge outlines which records jury can consider regarding unlawful means of falsification. Judge is now moving through the 34 felony charges against Trump. Trump speaks with attorney as he reads the charges. Judge reads entire law of falsifying business records for the jury. Judge Juan Merchan is now reading the entire law. This includes the definitions for the relevant terms he listed earlier. Meanwhile, Trump is slouched way back in his chair with his chin resting on his chest. Judge explains the difference between motive and intent. Merchan tells the jury their verdict must be unanimous on each count. Now, here's the funny thing. CNN does this, but they do not include where the judge says you do not have to be unanimous as to whether the crime was committed, on which crime was committed, just if a crime was committed. Judge instructs jury in how they should deliberate. A juror's notes cannot be used by others or in place of evidence, a judge says. Several jurors look over at the first seat as the judge mentions the foreperson. Judge Merchan describes the process of the verdict will play out. Trump passes a note to his attorney. The jurors will give their cell phones to a court officer while they're deliberating. The judge says jurors may only discuss the case when all 12 individuals are together. Judge says jurors will work until 4:30 p.m. today. We'll figure out the other days going forward. He says, if they stay late going forward, it's unlikely they work later than 6 p.m. I think the judge is fully expecting that the jury will come back very quickly with a guilty verdict. And thus, Merchan concluded his instructions. There is one clarification, which is the foreperson should not sign the note with his actual name. Merchan asked the attorneys to approach the bench again. 2 jurors volunteer to learn how to use a laptop containing evidence. Jeez. You know, it's fascinating. The challenge with a jury of your peers in today's day and age is that, you know, as the saying goes, you will be judged not by a jury of your peers, but by a jury of people who did not know how to get out of jury duty. It's never going to be a jury of your peers. It's going to be a jury of random people. I mean, these are not Trump's peers. These are regular people. Trump's entirely different. And he doesn't even live in New York anymore right now. The jury leaves to begin their deliberations. You must find beyond a reasonable doubt, first, that he solicited, requested, commanded, or importuned, or intentionally aided that person to engage in that conduct. And second, that he did so with the state of mind required with the commission of the offense for the falsifying business records. Let's go through this. Okay, here we go. Here are the instructions. They must not make a decision based on biases or stereotypes. They must set aside personal differences. They must not speculate how long sentencing may be or what the punishment might be. You know what's really funny is they say things like this. If I'm ever on a jury, 99% chance I'm nullifying. So I ain't probably ever going to get on a jury. If they show me a video of a guy committing a murder and the guy says that he did it, but his defense is X, I'd be like, lock him up. I don't know, whatever, man. But if you can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and I got a high standard, I'm just going to be like, and if the judge is like, you cannot hold it against Trump for not testifying. Okay, I agree with that, Fifth Amendment. If they said you can't speculate on sentencing, I absolutely will. I'm going to be like, you want me to convict the guy for pot and put him in prison for 20 years? Nah, guilty. I'll nullify. The people must prove beyond a reasonable doubt every element of the crime. He reminds the jury it must not rest on its verdict on speculation. They can consider whether a witness hopes to receive a benefit. They cannot convict Trump on Cohen's testimony alone because he's an accomplice, but they can use his evidence if corroborated with other evidence. The jury must be unanimous if they find Trump guilty on each count on whether he committed the crime personally, acted in concert with others, or both. They must determine if Trump conspired to promote someone or prevent them from public office. They should deliberate with a view toward reaching an agreement without surrendering individual judgment. Jurors' notes cannot be used in place of evidence. The foreperson will deliver the verdict for each count after deliberations are over. They must surrender their phones and can only discuss the case when all 12 of them are together. Rashan also explained what makes a person guilty of falsifying business records in the first degree, explaining that they must have the intent to defraud. On what constitutes a violation of the Federal Election Campaign Act. It is unlawful for an individual to willfully make a contribution to any candidate running for office, including the presidency, exceeding a certain limits, which in the relevant years was 2,700. He also walked the jury through what they must find in the different counts leveled against Trump. Merchan explained what tax law violations were and said it was unlawful for a person to willfully produce a tax statement or document that was false. Fascinating. They're claiming that Donald Trump was paying off Stormy Daniels and then did not properly track the record so the tax would reflect differently. Amazing. It makes more sense Trump didn't know about it. Absolutely insane. What they are doing to Donald Trump could be the end of business in New York as we know it. We already saw with Kevin O'Leary when it came to the civil trial, where they claimed that he was defrauding these banks because he had improper records. They said that the Trump penthouse was 30,000 square feet when it was 10,000 square feet. I don't know the nuances of that, and I wasn't in the case, but I can tell you there's reasonable reasons for that discrepancy. First, is it 30,000 total square feet and 10,000 finished? Could it be that there's 20,000 square feet of like unfinished floors underneath it that they don't live in? Could it be that the guy who did the paperwork, who is not Trump, accidentally wrote the wrong number down? That's simple. What are we looking at right now? If you run a business in New York and you get a bill in the mail from your legal team, you can't pay it. Because if you do, they can make up a crime and say, you did it. And they'll put you on trial. Donald Trump's the boss. That means he gets an invoice. It goes right to his CEO, his CFO, not him. And they pay it. That's their responsibility. They pay it. Why would Trump know about it? We have bills that come in here and it's a number and I'm just like, sure. Right? Because we have teams that do things. If we're getting a new delivery of something or let's say it's like we need new cameras, they buy it. And then they say, oh, we need you to sign this form, cameras. Okay. They could come and claim, actually, it wasn't for cameras. And I'd have no idea. And then they get some couple liars to go on the stand and just say, oh, yeah, he knew. And I'm like, man, I have no idea what you're talking about. Show me the man and I will show you the crime. That's where we're at. They cannot leave the building. Trump smiles in court as jury begins deliberations. I love this. As the jury begins deliberations, Donald Trump stood up and smiled and then began speaking with his attorney, Alina Habba, and his son, Donald Trump Jr. Trump looked around on his way out of the courtroom and seemed to give a couple of small smiles to some reporters. Remember, Trump is required to stay inside the Manhattan courthouse while the jury deliberates. Perhaps they hope jury deliberations will just go on for quite some time. so that Donald Trump is jammed up and can't actually campaign or do anything to benefit his candidacy. All of this press on Trump. Jury deliberation is now at 32 minutes. What are they even discussing, I wonder? With the rules the judge just gave, what are they even discussing? I feel like the only conclusion they can have at this point, based on what he said, is Trump must be guilty. They outright, the prosecutor said in his closing arguments, the crime's already committed. Cohen admitted to it. Trump told him to do it. That's a fact. Yeah. What? Objection. Overruled. The game's rigged. The game is rigged, my friends. But we'll see. Maybe there will be one hung juror. One guy. One woman who just says, I am not going to be party to this. It really depends on where the sentiment is. They live in New York City. Do they want to be Bartmaned, as Vogel described it? Wake up one day with a flaming bag of crap on their porch or a brick through their window? I tell you, man, people are going to hunt these jurors down. I don't see how Trump gets a fair trial at all. We already know it's not fair. I don't see how he gets a fair verdict. We'll see what happens. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.